Okay, so now let's continue talking about the scientific method. So let's just review what we've done from part 1. Okay, so first we're going to ask questions. We're going to identify a problem. So when we do that, we're going to ask ourselves, what do we want to find out? Why, how, what, specific questions, okay? Then we're going to gather information. We're going to plan. We're going to do some research. What do you already know? Ask yourself, what do you already know about this topic? Research the question. You may need to read up on some things. Your goal is to become an expert on this topic. All right. Then once you've decided, okay, I'm going to test this, I'm going to find the answer, then you're going to identify your variables. An experiment that has too many variables is not a controlled experiment. It then becomes chaotic. If you're trying to test too many different things, then your results are going to be inconclusive. All right, so you're going to decide on your independent variable, your control variable, and your dependent variable. And in the next couple of videos, I'll go into more details on how to do that, but this is the step in when you would do that. As you're planning your experiment, before you do your experiment, you figure out what are those variables. What are you testing? What are you going to measure? And how are you going to know if there was a relationship between the two things? You're going to make a prediction, which is the hypothesis, based off of what you know and your research. It cannot just be, I think that the plants will grow. Okay, it needs to be very specific. If the amount of sunlight is changed in the plants, then the plant height will be affected because, and that's where you support it with your reason. All right, this thought did not just pop into your head for no reason. There is reason. You researched it and you found out, or you've put together what you know and you have your own reasoning for it. Then you're going to actually conduct your experiment, the fun part. You're going to observe. You're going to see what happened. You know, is your hypothesis going to be supported by the data that you are collecting? That's when you would observe, and observing means that you're going to use your 5 senses. Sometimes you don't always use all of them. You're going to record your observations and measurements. So now let's talk about the next step. Okay, so after you have all of your data in your data table, then what do you do with it? Okay, so step 5 is to analyze your data. Okay, step 5 is to analyze your data. So this is where you take your data table and you make a graph. Okay, you visualize your data. Okay, this is the step where you're going to look and you're either going to take that data table and turn it into a bar graph, or you're going to take that data and turn it into a line graph or a pie chart or something to where you can visually see the relationship. Okay, so then your next step, your final step, is to make a conclusion. Okay, you're going to make a conclusion and you're going to share your results. Alright, so when you do this, this is where you're going to reflect. You're going to decide whether the data supports or fails to support hypothesis. Alright, this is where you're going to figure all that out. This is where you're going to write about the relationship. Write about the relationship in the data. You're going to use the graph to help you. Okay, so if the line is increasing, then you're going to talk about the increase. All right, everything's going to go back to this hypothesis because the hypothesis drives your experiment. So after you have tested it, you have data to either support your hypothesis that yes, this does happen, and this is where you're going to figure out whether maybe it didn't support it. So then you're going to ask more questions. And then we start all the way back with the process again. So remember that the first step was to ask questions. So at the end, after we have done the first test, this is our first experiment, then we're going to realize, hey, I found this out. I wonder what would happen if I change this factor. So then now you've come up with a new experiment. All right, so that is the scientific method. Check out my next video. It's going to be about identifying variables.